I recall the past real vaguely. I remember everything they'd say. Maybe thought that I was crazy, thinking that one day they'd see my name. Love being a loner, always moving closer. Knew exactly what I wanted to have. Fear of growing older, chip all on my shoulder. Told myself I'm never looking back. And now I'm cold and dissonant. I'm losing my innocence, and you don't know my intent. And now you better back down, 'cause I'm coming for you. 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 I'm sick of feeling like I just keep chasing, but that'll never be that fast. Just leave me alone, I'll do it on my own, and I will let them know when the lights shine bright. Look pale as a ghost to all those opposed. I'm coming here to show how to live life right. And now I'm cold and dissonant. I'm losing my innocence, and you don't know my intent. And now you better back down, 'cause I'm coming for you. Better back down, 'cause I'm coming for you. Better back down, 'cause I'm coming for you. Better back down, 'cause I'm coming for you.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
That was interesting timing. Autoplay YouTube. Thank you.
I know, right? Welcome back, Wolfpack. Unidentified secret dire wolf here for our weekly news recap, which has been like 3 weeks in the making, right? Behind
I think it's our year preview recap.
Yeah. Behind enemy lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. Alongside me is my unidentified secret co-host, Fox Trevize. How are you, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. It's a happy new year. I've had a lot of
Be gone from me, you soy boy beta cock. The transaction is complete.
Well.
Hope you guys had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Well, thank you, the Infidel. We did have a Happy Christmas and a Merry New Year. We very much appreciate the $20 and hope that you did as well.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, actually a good holiday. I had my my third child born on the day after Christmas, went into labor on Christmas, so best gift I got. The world is burning a little more than it was before Christmas.
Yeah, what a year to bring a child into the world, Dyer.
I know. Yeah, so there's been a lot of news, but I think we very much needed the break from covering the news.
Yeah, I got a nice I got a nice long like week and a half break off of work, which was great because the end of the year was insane for me. Jumped right back into the fray this week at work. A lot of crazy stuff happened. Having some good personal trajectory on my career though, because as you guys know, we do have day jobs, not just this. So that comes with the benefit that we don't have to do commercials every 3 minutes, and we're not beholden to anything. We don't have any, even amongst ourselves, we don't have any investors that we're beholden to. We're just beholden to basically the community support. That's the only thing that we're beholden to. It's no money attached to that, though we do appreciate the donations when they roll in, like how the Infidel just gave. But yeah, so we both have jobs, and I believe Dyer even got like almost a whole week off, didn't you?
I did. So prior to Christmas and continuing up to some degree, just like Fox, where his job had ramped up quite a bit, the work I had to do had ramped up quite a bit, and I hadn't been able to take any leave for a long time. I actually have 70 days of leave accrued, some of which is use or lose. Meaning if I don't use it soon, I'm just going to lose the leave. But when the baby was born, I was going to go into work. The boss told me not to. So like, oh, okay. Boss telling me not to go into work, and I'm not going to argue with him.
You're bound to follow orders, right?
Yeah, that was a lawful order, and I will follow that.
Yeah, it was your duty.
Anyways, this show is made possible by you guys. We very much appreciate you guys with all the feedback, being involved in the conversation, the donations, the likes, the subscribes. You guys know we're fighting an uphill battle here with YouTube and other social media outlets that are very much opposed to us having the opinions we have. And our time on these platforms is not assumed to be long-standing.
Shorter and shorter every day.
People like us are being banned en masse. 60,000 people banned off of Twitter just in the last week or so, and lots of people banned off of YouTube as well, just for saying the same opinions we have, or similar opinions to what we have, just because we are, opinions of dissent from the temples. What the temples ordained as being the okay opinions.
The sacred priestesses.
Right,
which we'll get into. Maybe is there a possibility you can like unplug your mic and plug it back in, Dyer? You have this like gain loop where you get really loud, then it drops the volume, and then it slowly ramps back up, and then it drops the volume again. I know you're doing it on purpose to annoy everybody, but we do have a staggering number of people watching tonight as per our normal live audience. We have good viewership usually on the replays. That's not a problem, but it's up at the high numbers right now for how many people watch us live. So if I assume some of you guys are at least new, if you guys found us recently, let us know where you found us, and I don't know if it's better or not, Dyer. Let us know how you found us, and if you have the ability to share out the links. Dyer's rolling his eyes right now. Yes, Dyer, I can hear you typing.
I meant when I just start speaking, obviously.
Maybe. But no, if you guys have the opportunity to share us out, if you guys have Discords or Telegrams or Twitter or Parler or wherever, just text your friends the link. You can text your friends a link to this. But we'd appreciate you helping boost us out, because we're gonna be limited to that kind of a network now, moving off into the future. We knew this was coming, but more and more this year, and throughout the Joe Biden presidency, your communication will not come find you. You're gonna have to have deliberate effort to talk to people, to send out information, and you have to have a deliberate effort to go out and find that information. It is so easy if you're just on autopilot, gathering information in the world, that all you're going to get is left-wing trash sources that is just fake news. It sounds kind of crass and almost maybe a little bit cringe to say it like that. It's like, the fake news. I'm just oversimplifying it, but that's really the truth of it. Unfortunately, is that it is that simple. If you're just on autopilot, you're getting fake news coming from the mainstream media.
We have people from CNN bragging about how they choose who will be elected because they control the information that we are provided. The truth is that they have shown themselves to be very dishonest on a regular basis. The fact that they went with the narrative with the Covington kids, where they paint one picture and they went with it, even when they knew it was false. The fact that they were praising rioting from the left for 6 months and then condemning any kind of protest, no matter how nonviolent it was from the left, from the right, as being far right extremists. They've shown themselves to be blatantly political and dishonest, and you have to understand the importance of why the reason why it's so important for you to go out and find sources of information that are not the ones that are being freely provided to you from the mainstream media is because if you don't, then the only information you will have available to you is the one filtered through the mainstream media, which you already know is dishonest. It doesn't mean everything they say is automatically a lie, but you know that they are willing to lie to you on a regular basis, and you need to evaluate any information you're given based off what and try to determine whether it's true or not. Look at it critically, and you can't do that if the only information you're provided is from those sources.
Yeah, and that's really more for you guys. You guys know all of that, but that's more for how you're looking at the other people in your life. That is, if you have other people in your life, most of us probably have friends and family who are not as political as we are, the normies. But that is the problem. If you have normies in your life and you're not figuring out a way to explain reality to them, giving them other opinions, other ideas that is outside the mainstream, you're gonna lose them. And worse than that, they're gonna turn on you eventually, because that's what the left does. It's this mind virus that drives people insane, saying there's Nazis around every corner. And until people just go insane and they start going after their friends and family, which is going to be you. So
yes,
if you want to kind of inoculate the people in your life, that's on you to be sharing this information with them. And I know that's generally been seen as like uncomfortable, or people have tried that in the past and gotten rebuked for it. And it's I don't necessarily have a tactic recommendation tonight. Maybe that's something we can do another time as a more thorough review of what kind of tactics you can do to talk to your friends and family in your life about things that are going on in the world, and about I guess now we're the new resistance against leftism. Yeah, that's on you to try and figure some of that stuff out. If we want to keep this, I guess, the quote unquote boogaloo at this cold state, it's going to require conversations.
Talking politics with someone to try to convince them sometimes is like a mixture between you having to be a hostage negotiator and a salesman. And that's kind of like some of the same skills you have to use. You could kind of say it's like that. But the reason why you need to be willing to engage people and come with information, have your set things to discuss, known and practiced, because what the mainstream media and what the far left politicians are trying to do is twofold. First, they're trying to convince the people in your life that anyone who has a dissenting opinion is evil and should be destroyed and removed from society. And at the same time, they're trying to pressure you into being uncomfortable being on the outside and not having the same opinions as those around you, to make you conform to those opinions, even though they're false. Even though you have conflicting information, they want to instill in you a fear of saying, oh, well, that information means that thing that they're saying is not true, and then disagreeing with it. They want you to cave.
So an example of the problems with this perception issue is, I believe that they came up this week, where there was a narrative coming out of the mainstream media about something, and it seemed to not reflect the reality of the situation on the ground. Dyer, do you know what that situation was? Can you think of anything that might have happened this week that might have had the mainstream media all up in arms? I know something happened. I just can't quite put my finger on remembering what it was that happened this week.
there was the protesting and rioting in D.C. on the 6th.
Was it wait a second, was it this? Is this a picture from the rioting this week?
No, that's a different riot.
No,
that's from earlier this year.
Is this one from the riots in DC this week?
No, that one was after a police shooting.
Also, yeah, it's also in DC, outside the White House.
Yep.
Was this one? This one says it's outside the White House. Was this from last week?
No, but those are fiery but mostly peaceful protesters, actually.
Oh, okay. So, what? Man, I know I had some pictures this week. Oh, okay. So, the one on the left here is where there's smoke, just horrible image. There's smoke billowing throughout all the streets with the Washington Monument in the background. Is that from this week? No.
No.
Oh, okay. Just this one on the right is okay. I don't even see any fires in this one. That's no, that's not to say that the one on the right's a good image, but I don't see any fires. I don't see any burning police cars.
No, but what you're getting at is we've had 6 months of almost daily riots, fires, destruction of property, assault of people, the literal murder of people, the setup of the Chaz and lots of rapes and shootings, huge rise in crime. And all of this has been praised and funded by mainstream Democrats. We have the president-elect and his vice president-elect who have actually funded the bail of Antifa and BLM writers who had committed violent crimes, destroying businesses and homes in mostly lower end areas, places where that have a higher percentage of black people living there. And so they're saying that they're rioting because of the treatment of black people. Then they destroy businesses owned by black people and attack black people and other minority groups. They said this was justice. They said this was moral when Antifa and BLM committed violent crimes against federal employees and caused destruction of federal property. They said that when BLM and Antifa when federal police were sent in to stop Antifa and BLM from destroying federal courthouses, that it was the presence of the federal police that was causing the violence, not the fact that it was a response to violence. For 6 months, they've been telling us that this is okay to destroy federal buildings and to attack federal employees. This is moral and just reaction to injustice. But then one day,
well, so hold on. So let's. Are you working off a show map that I don't got? But
no.
Okay. Well, let's try to keep stuff in order here. But why don't we describe what actually happened this week?
Yeah.
I tried to start off with a joke as to pretending I didn't know what it was, so you would describe it. But you described what was going on all the last 9 months instead. But that's okay. So what happened this week was on Wednesday, on the 6th, we had.
It's not comparable to the last 6 months in any way.
I know. So we had the. There was an event that happened in D.C. That was the day that they were counting the electoral votes. And there was a planned rally there. Trump spoke at it in the morning. And we got a timeline that we'll go through here in a little bit. But the gist of it is that at some point, the mob, the protest turned into a mob. And they stormed the Capitol building. They made their way into the Capitol building. And then they proceeded to run around the Capitol building for a little while. Somebody died. They were executed by Capitol Police who shot at other Capitol Police to kill this woman. We'll certainly get into that. But after this event, there's been I kind of want to get into this part before we go further, there's been a huge push from the left, as there always is, that we need to condemn and disavow this. And we're not wasting our time with that on this show. That's for sure. So why am I not going to condemn this? What are my feelings on what happened on Wednesday? So I don't support it. I think that is in line with everything that we've said on the show for the whole summer. There's been a few rallies and protests planned against the lockdowns, against the gun control in Virginia, against all sorts of other stuff. And we've said on this show, don't go to the rallies. We don't recommend it. We don't think that it's actually going to do anything. It's really only putting you in danger. And then it gives the left something to grab onto to spin into a bad narrative. Now, that was opposed to if Antifa is mobbing your city and you want to go defend your business or a friend or family or just somebody in the community's business, that is certainly your right to go out there and do that. And we support and encourage you to defend yourself and defend your community like that. But that's not going out to a protest specifically. Us saying that we don't support what happened on Wednesday, I don't really even support the protest, directly. Not saying I'm opposed to it, but I didn't go there. I didn't recommend anyone else go there. So that's what I'm meaning by not supporting it. And I don't support them breaking into the Capitol building. And again, like I said, that aligns with the position that we've had, that we don't think that protests are very useful in the modern context. Not to say that's not your legal right to do it. It's just in the modern context, they're not very useful for the right.
Why would you do that?
Why would I do that? Slowpoke gave us $2. He says, the reason they are mad as hell is because they attacked the American royalty, and of course they can't let that happen. Nah, the people need to be put in their place, and wonder why that happened. So that's interesting that you said that, Slowpoke, because we have a lot of the left has turned this into an attack on a religious event, basically. I've got a bunch of quotes pulled up from prominent figures on the left describing themselves in a theocratic way, describing the Capitol building as a temple, describing the process of counting votes, the electoral votes as a sacred ritual. Nancy Pelosi describing her and her fellow congressmen as sacred office holders. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. They actually have and they're pulling back even just kind of the allusions to it. They're being very direct, that they think that they are the priest class and that we live under a theocracy now. That
they are above us, that they are ordained with more more rights above us, and that they dictate to us what how we should be living, just like the priesthood used to. I want to hit on what you said. We have been consistent. We are opposed to violence, attacking people, and destroying property. Because I don't think that is helpful in getting the change you want, and it's not helping the cause in any way. We've been consistent, and when the left did it, it was wrong. When the right did it, that was not anywhere on the same moral grounds and in the same severity. It is also wrong. However, we're not going to have the morals and civility preached to us from the left when they have been advocating for and supporting those things. There's a moral difference between the Maxine Waters and the Democrats on the left funding and supporting and directing terrorism against people in the streets, and then it happening because they directed it, and when we have been opposed to it, and then it happens because someone on our side did it. There's a moral difference. We have not supported it, thus when it happens, it is not something that we need to condemn more. We already condemned it in general. And Trump has never directed this to happen. He has condemned it, and on both sides, whenever it happens, but it happens more on the left. So we don't need to come out and condemn this thing because we haven't been telling people to do it.
Exactly. So basically where I was going with that is I was explaining that I'm not saying that I support this, but as Dyer was explaining, we're not going to go through the elaborate rituals of apologizing for it, this was wrong and just berating, we got to condemn it, we got to disavow all this stuff that the left wants us to do, and go through the contrition sacrament that they would like us to go through. We're not going to do that for two reasons. One, as Dyer pointed out, so the two sides that are asking for the right to apologize for this is the left and then also the right. So first on the left, you have all of those people that Dyer just said who have been specifically calling for funding the violence all summer long. The left that has the institutional support of all the corporations, of the legal system. They've got money and bail funds set up. They had the current vice president-elect had a Kamala Harris branded Minnesota Defense Fund that was letting rioters and looters out of jail. So from a left perspective, I'll be damned before I take a morality lesson from them. It is absolutely ridiculous that they think that they have any kind of authority to tell us that we need to be collectively sorry for the actions of a small group of, I guess Trump supporters is what they're calling them. So I'm not going to take that from the left, because we don't have institutional support. When Antifa does something, they are like, when they go out and they burn down a city, they are doing that with the support of national politicians telling them that they need to get out in the streets and that they need to be making people uncomfortable and getting in their faces and doing all of this stuff. They've got direct support from the politicians. They have the politicians defending them in the House committee hearings and the Senate committee hearings, directly saying that Antifa doesn't even exist. The violence is a myth. It's a complete myth, even though we've got all these pictures of it. So they have broad political support and defense. Antifa does when they go out and do something. They have broad monetary defense from, again, orchestrating all of these bail funds, orchestrating lawyers to make sure that they get them out of jail quickly. They have broad propaganda support from all the major corporations, all the social media, all the mainstream media. So when Antifa does something, they're doing it as the spearhead of this very large, unified leftist apparatus, this leviathan of the left. When a small group on the right does something, they're doing it on their own. They don't have anybody behind them. They don't have bail funds. They don't have propaganda support. They never even have the support of their politicians, no matter what it is or how benign it is. So when Antifa does something, it is very correct to say that represents the left, because there's unanimity on the left in supporting what Antifa does. When somebody on the right does something, though, there's not any way of pinning that to the rest of the right. You can make these like vague allusions to, like, well, they were on 4chan, or they had a Facebook group, or they YouTube rabbit hole, all this stuff. You can make these vague connections, but you can't trace down specific institutional support. You can't trace down dozens of their top politicians on the right telling them specifically to go out and commit violence in the streets. You can't find that on the right. You can't find any major corporation or mainstream media outlet pushing the propaganda. Not even Fox. You don't see that. So when you have something happen on the right, you can't connect. You can't just say, oh, well, that represents the right, because it's not connected to anything. We don't have any infrastructure connection, which is a problem. That's a problem that's led to a lot of why we've lost the left so badly the last decade. But it still also it means that you can't pin this on everybody. So I'm not going to take that from the left by saying, like, oh, well, everybody needs to condemn and disavow. This is just a group of random people to me. It's not like I was calling on bail funds, or we weren't tweeting out bail funds for you guys to get these guys out of jail when they got arrested. No, so we didn't support it. We didn't go to it. I don't feel any way connected to it. I don't feel like the right has any kind of structure supporting what happened here. It's just a group of people that happened to go out and do that. So no, I'm not going to waste my time condemning and disavowing it to the left after they have, again, as I described, that institutional infrastructure supporting Antifa and BLM. Now, so that's coming from the left. It's just full stop. I don't care what the left says. I'm not even having the conversation. Now, from the right, you've got the right coming back and doing a similar thing where the left will never condemn their own people no matter what happens. The right loves condemning their own people. They think that it's kind of this game of like,
a badge of honor.
Yes, it's a badge of honor. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. It's we're so neutral and objective that we're willing to go after our own people. But there's and that's good. You got to hold your own side accountable. That's certainly laudable. But a lot of Republican politicians have taken that to nearly a fetish degree, where they not only are willing to call out the right, they enjoy it. They get pleasure out of it. They do it much more so than what needs to be done. They get a lot of pleasure out of berating their own side, which, again, that goes to our fault for how we've chosen our
They're
politicians.
trying to distance themselves to make it look like, oh, I'm not one of that evil extreme. I'm the good one. The problem is, no matter how much you call out, no matter how emphatically you call out, when someone on your side does something wrong, even if you have to overstate it, it's never going to make the Democrats ever respect you or ever see you as not someone to be destroyed. They are putting so much effort in trying to distance themselves from other Republicans who may have made a misstep, that in the hopes that they will be accepted, but they won't.
Yeah, and so you've got that, and I'll come back to that in a second, because I do have someone else to say on that, on the point you just made. But one of the other reasons why I don't really want to hear the request for apologizing from the right, coming from the right side, and I'm not interested in hearing the berating of the movement at large of all conservatives, and we're seeing this from the likes of Lindsey Graham, and you guys know the types, who are saying this is a problem with the right, and that they needed to take responsibility for what happened as the right. One of the key differences at the ideological level, which this kind of explains why Lindsey Graham doesn't get it, but the key difference on the ideological level between the conservatives and the liberals is leftists are unity. They are the community. They are communal. They are communists. They do things as a group, as a mind meld Borg mentality. Collectivist, that's the word I'm looking for. Whereas on the right, we are the inherent principle is individualism. It's inherent that you take responsibility for yourself, and you don't have to take responsibility for other people, and you're not responsible to other people unless you choose to be. And so the idea that the right wants to come at us and say, well, everyone on the right should take collective responsibility for what happened in D.C., no, that's inherently against the principle. I'm not going to take responsibility. I wasn't there. I just went through. I didn't support the activity that happened there. There was no institutional structures on the right that were supporting that. You didn't see Louder with Crowder setting up bail funds for this. You didn't see Direwolf Media tweeting out links for bail funds or propaganda pieces for it. We didn't do any of that stuff. There is no institutional support for this. There is no collective action as there is on the left. So for the right for politicians on the right to pretend like we should be apologizing for this in a collective fashion, it's more infuriating because it misses the point of conservatism, which, that's kind of that kind of gives away the game of some of these quote unquote Republican politicians, right? Is that they're not actually conservatives. They don't understand conservatism. Like Lindsey Graham, he had some interesting voting patterns these last 4 years. He's been useful at times. But I don't think that even in the best of times with Lindsey Graham, I think every conservative, every commentator looked at Lindsey Graham at the best of times and was like, yeah, but it's still Lindsey Graham, isn't it? Like, oh man, I guess it's Lindsey Graham 2.0. Lindsey Graham 2.0 is actually a name that was given to him to try to describe the shift that seemed to have happened with Lindsey. But we all knew deep down that Lindsey Graham 1.0 was still in there somewhere. And he came back up this week. That was the same with a lot of other politicians, a lot of other Republicans this week, is that they came back. You even had some commentators on the right. Ben Shapiro made some comments this week that seemed to imply that the right should be taking a collectivist apology towards what happened.
I will not be lectured on civility from the Democrats or the left or the Republicans who are bending the knee and apologizing for what some Republicans, and honestly, there was some pictures showing that some of the individuals who are at the DC protest riot were actually also at Antifa riots in the past, or BLM riots in the past, that those individuals may actually not actually been Trump supporters. One individual had never voted for, and never voted once, and definitely did not support Trump. So I think that it is ridiculous for them to demand us apologize and lecture us about civility when they have not been civil. You could say on the macro level, like the trying to impeach someone over opposition research and do a soft coup, or trying to impeach someone over a phone call that was completely reasonable, that wasn't civil. But also saying that anyone who supported Trump should be removed from society. That was Keith Olbermann. That's not civil. Maxine Waters is saying they should find Trump allies in the streets and harass them and get in their face and let them know they're not welcome here. That's not civil. They have not. When Ted Cruz on the 6th gave a speech about unity and how we need to just stop all this fighting, and he was saying that we should have unity, AOC responded by demanding that he resign for supporting Trump, for daring to, you're going to get into this later, but for daring to not contest the vote. They've not been civil, and I will not be lectured by them about civility.
So you were touching on a point a minute ago about how the optics was essentially the summary of it, that does this look bad for us, and the way that the left looks at us. So I was hearing a lot of that this week too, mostly from the right, because as I'll explain in a minute, there's not a lot of contrast on the left right now with what how they view the conservatives. So on the right, I heard a lot of, well, this looks bad, guys. This looks bad. I won't disagree with that. It looks bad. But from the perspective of the left, if I'm going to apologize for something that I didn't do, or I'm going to not do something because I'm worried about the optics of it, you have to remember that the left, these are the people that said a white 16-year-old boy smiling was the Fourth Reich, that it was such an egregious act that he should be put into a wood chipper. They wanted him arrested for smiling. They tried very hard to destroy his family. They said he should be barred from all American universities for existing and smiling. That is the level that the left went after a white child smiling. So when a white child smiling is the Fourth Reich, you don't leave a lot of gray space in there for what the perceived action is. So if your just mere existence is the worst thing in the world, worthy of you being ousted from society, then there's not a lot of opportunity cost for you storming the Capitol. It's like, yeah, that looks bad, but you also said me standing there with a smile on also looked bad. You're using the exact same language to describe children smiling as you do a siege on our Capitol building.
Yeah. On the same note, they said that going and seeing a Milo Yiannopoulos or going to see Ben Shapiro speak, just going to the event to listen to him speak, made you a Nazi, and that it was it justified punching you, beating you, pepper spraying you. That they are saying anyone who is perceived to possibly have a dissenting opinion, a separate opinion from them, that makes them a Nazi. And not only does that assign you that title, but also it justifies violence against you. They are not civil.
Yeah. So you've got some confluence of events that happen to get to what happened on Wednesday, and I think it was Navy Snipe asked, did we support it, or what we thought about it? And realistically, so like I said, I don't support it. I'm not going to condone it or condemn it for all of the reasons I just explained, because I just don't think it's worth my time to condemn it. But I understand why it happened. I understand why it happened. I think we're going to start going through that now. So you've got this problem with the left where they've removed all contrast in what it means to be on the right. They've removed the entire spectrum from peaceful existence to violent rioting. They've marked all of that with the exact same shade of black. It's the worst thing in the world. So if you are going to stand there and smile, or you could go storm the Capitol building, and they're going to say the exact same thing about you in both cases, then there's not really an opportunity cost there. Now, if you're on the right, you probably got a job, or you did last year, well, 2 years ago now, or you had stuff to do, or you had a small business to run, or you were part of the financial system. You probably had some reasons why you were attached to the society above and beyond what the left would say about you if you went to go storm the Capitol. But this year they took all that away. There was millions of people that they took that away from. They had the lockdowns, which destroyed countless small businesses. They had the Antifa, again, as I said, the institutionally supported and directed Antifa destruction of whatever small businesses their lockdown policies didn't destroy. They came down and burned them to the ground. If you had the audacity to survive the first 3 months of COVID, you had BLM come and burn down your business. How dare you? How dare you survive for 3 months under leftist lockdown? We were trying to get to this communist utopia, don't you know? So, and then you've got just the absolute, just evisceration of social media, just pulling everybody and anybody off social media, banning them across as many platforms as they can get their hands on. You have an increasing lockout of the banking system. You had like Kyle Rittenhouse's bail fund. You had Discover MasterCard saying, we're not going to process transactions to that fund. And that's just a recent example. They've been doing, various banks have been locking people out of their accounts for the last couple of years now. I mean, Alex Jones hasn't had, if you can name a bank, if it's like one of like the top 5 banks, Alex Jones literally can't have bank accounts there for the last 5 years. I think Milo's got a few bank accounts locked out. You've got, a whole bunch of people who've got, again, this is all old news. I mean, this has been happening over the last 4 years, but it's more and more and more. Now you actually had this week, there was a bill put onto the floor by the Democrats that wanted to enshrine in law that banks, not only could they, but banks are obligated to lock out conservatives from their accounts. They've got some, flowery language in there that, makes it look like it's quote unquote, well, terrorist activity, but we already have provisions for terrorist activity in the banking system. No, they wanted to make sure that expanded out to anybody who voted for Trump.
And don't forget Jake Gardner, what that did to him. Yeah.
So, and if you got, again, so the people who aren't being driven to suicide, you now have all of those things that are connecting you to society, your life, your liberty, your property, your financial connections. They're snipping all of those away. And so maybe last year they would have called you a Nazi if you smiled at them or if you stormed the Capitol. So there was no contrast there. But you knew that if you stormed the Capitol, like, well, that's probably not going to look real great. And I got a bar back home I've got opened, and I want to make sure that that's not connected to me because I'm a business owner, or, I've got a family, or I do this sort of stuff. But now, because they've removed all of that, well, you don't have there's no stopgap for that. One of the things that prevents revolution, and I'm not necessarily saying that this was the start of a revolution, but the things that keep civil unrest tamped down is when the fabric of civil society is strong. You look at what goes on in the Middle East. Why is the Middle East such a shit show at all times a day, all times a year for the last
They feel
several
no
decades?
connection to the wider society.
Because there is nothing. There is nothing there. They've destroyed all of their infrastructure. They don't have good infrastructure to support business and an economy. They don't have good schools. They don't have technology. They don't have anything that's like that is the grease that makes society flow. All they have is violence and foxholes. That's it. And they just,
and tribes.
Yes.
Small tribes fighting each other. So you might even say what the Democrats have done over the last 4 years is engineer the actions that are happening. So when you take away someone's their job, their ability to support themselves, to feed themselves and their families, you make them feel unsafe by creating a ever-present danger in the streets that they might be attacked, and you make it so they feel like they can't be heard, so any of these issues they have can't be addressed because you're silencing them and people like them. Even just the fear caused by them seeing someone with their opinion being silenced causes the same effect of them feeling that they cannot be heard. Right, so you've taken away these people's connections to society. You take away their connection. They feel divided by all these different little groups that they're trying to make hate each other and fear each other. And then you take away their livelihoods, that makes people desperate, and it makes them feel like the only way they can do anything is to react violently. And so you're going to engineer with their actions more of what you're seeing on both sides.
So maybe Snipe's actual question was, why is this bad? So personally, this is just me speaking, not speaking for Dyer. I'm sure he can chime in if he would like to, but as I said, I don't support this. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm also not going to say it's a bad thing. Of the and maybe that's just an emotional visceral response to not say that's a bad thing. There's a lot of aspects of what happened that on a visceral level, I liked it. You see some congressmen cowering. I'm not going to say I think that's a bad thing. When I see images of not just congressmen in general, but like there is a specific congresswoman, I can't remember what her name is, but I know that she's she's like adjacent to the squad. But there's video of her cowering in the Capitol building. And I know that she in particular has spoken some pretty lofty rhetoric about what kind of violence should be going down on the streets all summer. Previous to that, she's spoken out in defense of burning down small businesses and hunting down conservatives in the streets. And so I would say that she has brought a lot of fear and terror to regular citizens all year. And then to see her cowering in fear for once, I think that's some just desserts there. And that's not a moral position that I have. That's a very visceral, maybe you could even call it ugly position that I have. But on a deep level, I liked it. I did. There's a lot of aspects of it that I didn't like. So for me, overall, looking at the entire event, I don't think it was good or bad. There is aspects of it that were good and bad, in my opinion. But again, those are visceral reactions. Those aren't moral opinions or good political positions that I have, and I'm willing to admit that. That's why I'm explaining it like this. But you see what's been going on, what they've been doing all year with the violence. I'll go back through some of these pictures, and you got one up here right now where you got fine versus a problem, where you've got billowing black smoke all throughout the streets of DC, and then you've got smoke all throughout the streets of DC on the other side. It's the same thing, yet when BLM was doing it with these images are from DC in May after George Floyd. This was all fine. This was all peaceful. This was perfectly okay. This was the voices of the unheard. This was a good thing. And then when there's not really even any fires, we just happen to go to they just happened to go to the courthouse or the Capitol building that day. All of a sudden, it's the end of the world. And so seeing what they've been doing to America, this terrorism across America for a year now, well, much longer than that, but really ramped up in the last year. I'm not going to defend it on a moral level, but yeah, I definitely do. I'm a human being. I've got some visceral. I liked seeing those congressmen in fear after what they supported all year.
So it's a two-part answer for me. First off, the idealistic, status you'd want is for there not to be destruction and not to be violence on either end. I don't think it's good for our country when we are fighting each other and burning our shit down and attacking people. So yes, I don't think it's good when a Trump supporter does it or when Antifa does it. It's bad all around when we are fighting each other and we're not united. However, I understand how we got here and that after all they've done, this is a natural expected response that you should see coming. It's kind of like this. If you have someone who has a nice house in a neighborhood and they go set another house in the neighborhood on fire, they shouldn't be surprised when that fire works its way to their house. And they shouldn't complain when their house starts burning down because they lit the fucking fire.
I think what you said too about understanding why this happened, and that's what I was saying too, is again, whether it was a good or a bad thing, we both understand why it happened, and that's what we were just describing as to why we got to where we are. But you got to remember, before we got to this point, for the last decade, Dyer for the last 4 years, me for the last 2, we've been begging the left to stop doing this because we saw what they were forcing us into. We saw these things that they were setting up in society that was causing these things to happen, that was setting up the groundwork for where you've got at least 1,000 people that have no connection, no consequences to society, whether they stand there and smile or whether they go up and storm the Capitol. The left had set that up, and we've seen that coming for a long time now. And for a long time now, we were begging them to stop because we thought it would be a bad thing when we got here. Now that we're here, again, I'm not going to sit there and say I support it. I understand where it came from, but I did my effort to make sure that we didn't get here. Dyer did his effort to make sure he didn't get here. A lot of you have made your efforts to try to get the left to understand. You are driving us here. This is where we're going to, because of the way that you've restructured society and the rugs that you've pulled out from broad swaths of the population. You set up the groundwork. The left set up the groundwork for this. The right has been trying for a long time, warning that this was going to happen. We've been trying very hard to avert this. But now that we're here, I'm not going to be like, oh, wow, that was unexpected. No, we've been expecting it for a very long time.
Right. And we don't think it's good, but it's the natural course of action, how it's going to result. They've been preaching an ideology that it preaches hate of people of different racial and gender groups. They've been persecuting people. They've been silencing people. This is, ironically, what they said that Trump was going to do is what they've been doing. Trump didn't go out and attack any group in America and silence them or cause harm to them or direct anyone to do that. But the Democrats have. They accuse Trump of what they actually have actively been doing. They believe in segregation. They believe in trying to knock down white men and any other group down that chain of what do you call it? The woke chain.
The hierarchy, the oppression hierarchy.
Yeah, the oppression hierarchy. They've been preaching causing harm to those groups. And I don't always mean physical harm, but sometimes it is. Like even the fact that they're talking about the vaccine in the terms of we should give out the vaccine in a way that will balance the tables between white and black. Meaning we want more white people to die because we think it'd be better for society to have less black people die. That's the way they think. That's the kind of perspective. So when a white guy hears that, right, they should rightly feel that they are not safe in society.
Yep. So I think maybe we go through a little bit of the timeline here. So
yeah, that was kind of our show map.
Yeah. So this is from the Lotus Eaters, which is Carl Benjamin, formerly Sargon of Akkad, though he'll always be Sargon of Akkad in our hearts. He started a new media outlet called the Lotus Eaters, which we talked about back in December. But I joined up as a member. I highly encourage you all to join up. They've got very quality content. They're doing a podcast every morning in Eastern time zone because they're doing it from the UK. And they've got some premium content going. I certainly encourage you guys to go take a look at it. They've got some, as any media outlet does, they've got some stuff on the in front of the paywall, and then there's some stuff behind the paywall. But this is hopefully part of a growing group. Again, we've got our issues with Daily Wire and some other places too. But Crowder, Daily Wire, Lotus Eaters, they're all growing, and they are going to become hopefully the new fabric of the left or the rightist, the conservative, I guess culture or mainstream media. What will eventually become the mainstream media for the right, because as enforced by the left, we can't be together anymore. You got to segregate stuff. So we'll have our side, which will be them, and they'll have their side, which will be Don Lemon. Lucky them. So, but he's anyways, like I said, so this is from Sargon's new site. We're going to start using them as sources as much as we can because they got some good stuff going on there. But just to let you guys know where this came from. So this is on Wednesday this week, so at 11:15 a.m. And before we get into this, basically my view of all the individual things that happened on Wednesday, there's not a single part of Wednesday that was worse than even the tamest stuff the left was doing over the summer.
Yep.
So while I can still say there's parts of it that I don't like, again, I'm not going to sit there and pretend like this is, the World War III, Civil War III of all the crazy stuff that America's done. This is the worst day since Pearl Harbor. Ben Shapiro said this was the worst day for America since 9/11.
Oh, that's wrong.
That was insane to me that he would say that. Again, after we had Trump supporters hunted down and executed in the streets, you've had countless small business owners had their livelihoods destroyed. Some of them burned alive in their small business. You've had Antifa executing 3 black kids in a car with 100 bullets fired.
More people have died in a day during one Antifa riot than died during this thing, and it was far more damaging.
Yeah, just the previous BLM riots in DC, burning churches down. I wouldn't say any one of those was on the scale of 9/11.
There's no moral comparison.
Yeah, but the idea that what happened on Wednesday was any worse or even on the same page as what Antifa was doing all summer is just absolutely missing the point. You weren't watching what was happening if that's what you think. And for anyone, especially someone on the right, to compare this to, now I expect it from the left. So you had Chuck Schumer said that this was as bad as Pearl Harbor. I expect that from the left. And I mean, Chuck Schumer probably vividly remembers Pearl Harbor. I think Joe Biden was in Congress at that point. But for someone on the right, like Ben Shapiro, to say 9/11, 9/11's in recent memory for a lot of us. That's something that's Dyer's whole military career was focused around doing things that were a direct result of 9/11. All of my politics and my entire life has been focused around things as in the aftermath of what happened after 9/11. All of you, the entire internet era, grew up in the aftermath of what happened in 9/11 that led to things like the Patriot Act and dragnet surveillance and all of that stuff. What I'm trying to say, the spy state, whatever the hell that's called. But the idea that this was as bad as 9/11, really, Ben? Really? Jesus Christ. So, no, I don't think this was as bad as 9/11. I don't think it was bad as Pearl Harbor. I don't think it was even as bad as you pick the tamest Antifa riot all summer that you want, and no, this was not as bad as that. So, was it great? No. Was it that bad? Not that bad. Not that bad when you got a lot of stuff from Antifa to compare it to. So with that in mind, we'll start going through some more of the specific events. So on Wednesday morning at 11:15 a.m., growing crowds gathered to listen to Trump's speech at the Ellipse. Then at 1:10, early arriving protesters at the Capitol start clashing with the police trying to enter the building. So there's been some videos of that. The Capitol Police telling the Trump supporters that they're not welcome. That's pretty common. And the idea that anybody made it into the Capitol was kind of I think that was a surprise to everybody. Not the attempt, that wasn't surprising, but the idea that they were able to actually make it in was kind of surprising.
It is noted that there was not really enough of the Capitol Police there, and that they were given apparently instructions to have a light hand on the situation.
Go ahead.
So basically, try to not use very much force to keep people off the property, and because of that, they basically let people on and were talking to them as casually as they came into the building.
The other thing I want to say about all the individual events is that there was a lot of unprecedented was the buzzword on Wednesday. And the idea that any of this was unprecedented is absolutely laughable. So of the two major components, I would say rioting in D.C. and breaching the Capitol. Are any of those unprecedented? No. Again, the BLM riots in D.C. were far, far more destructive than what happened on Wednesday. So, no, rioting in D.C. is not unprecedented. And then breaching the Capitol. Is breaching the Capitol
Handmaid's Tale girls.
Yeah, tell us about the Handmaid's Tale girls, Dyer.
So when Kavanaugh, and not only when Kavanaugh, there's also a couple other situations where this similar thing happened. But during the Kavanaugh hearings, a bunch of women in the Handmaid's Tale uniforms, the red cloaks, broke onto into the building and were harassing lawmakers in the hallways and protesting in the building. This happened multiple times.
And because, they were invited in by the left, but they also, because of their presence, they paused and caused a delay in a proceeding, in the official business of the day in the Capitol building. They caused a delay in that by breaching, at the invitation of the left, coming in and disrupting the daily schedule. So it's not unprecedented for people to go into the Capitol building uninvited and disrupt the daily business. The left set that precedent as recently as 2 years ago. And then violent rioting with destruction on grand scale. Again, we saw the billowing fire with the backdrop of the Washington Monument, which, I mean, like, the picture on the left here, I mean, that just looks like we were attacked. I mean, that kind of imagery hasn't been seen since the British invaded. So the idea that that's unprecedented is just absolutely laughable. And I was hearing that from both sides, the left and the right, all day on Wednesday. This is unprecedented. Unfortunately, it's really not. I mean, I'm not taking any joy in the fact that it's not unprecedented. I'm just stating the fact. It's actually kind of sad that it's not unprecedented. It should be. It should always be unprecedented.
I wish it was.
Yeah, it should always be unprecedented, the idea that our capital could be breached like that, or that there could be riots in our capital city. I mean, I take no joy in that, but the idea that it was unprecedented, or that it was 9/11, Jesus Christ, cool your jets.
Yes.
Okay.
And so it's very obvious that the media and the politicians on the left very much overstated and how bad this was, and when in comparison to how much they praised the riots for the last 6 months, it shows how dishonest they are, and how anything that the right does, any kind of resistance at all, even a peaceful protest, will be considered terrorism, whereas their actual terrorism will be considered a moral act.
And that's where I was talking about earlier with the right is willing to call out their own side, but some on the right have a fetish with doing it. And that's where you get where it would be simple enough to just say, well, this isn't really good, guys. We shouldn't be doing this for X, Y, and Z reasons. It's not good that we did this. No, you get, this was 9/11. This was a foreign state-sponsored terror group flying 2 planes into our tallest, most iconic buildings, murdering 3,000 Americans. This was that bad.
It's partly because of how much they are dishonestly describing what happened, as well as them being disingenuous, that leads us to not feel like we would actually need to respond and condemn what happened, because they're not even being honest about what happened.
Yes. Okay. So you got Trump's speech at 11:15. They've got some other speakers. Wraps up around 1:10. 1:15. A quote sea of Trump supporters heads towards Pennsylvania Avenue and towards the Capitol. Fights and clashes with the police intensify. Which yes, there was a lot of videos of that. Again, that's. We'll talk about that one later, maybe. So let's see here. 1:24. More fights break out between the police and protesters. Edited video later shows protesters dismantling and overcoming barricades and reaching the steps of the building. Yes. So there was 4 levels of barricade groupings around the Capitol. It was kind of a layered perimeter set up. And so the Dyer could probably speak better better to this than I can, but the point of that is that if one perimeter is either too stressed or gets breached, you then have the inner perimeters that you can fall back to and consolidate. And so there was some videos showing police pulling down barricades in certain sections and kind of waving protesters and rioters in closer to the Capitol, and that was misinterpreted as the police being on their side, when realistically that was just the police pulling down the barricades and then reconsolidating their position. Now, something that's interesting is a lot of those videos, and I don't have one pulled up, but I'm sure you guys saw a lot of the stuff going on, a lot of the videos from that day. Several of the videos you've got where the police are pulling down one perimeter and consolidating on the next. You see the police kind of walking or brisk jog with their backs to the rioters. If they felt comfortable to put their backs to the Trump supporters that were rioting. In an Antifa situation, I don't think that you would see that. I think you would see them slowly walking backwards or gathering reinforcements. But I don't think that the police thought that they were in much danger other than when there was specific clashes. Now, there was also video of the barricades being used as ladders to climb up onto the ledge at the Capitol building, and then being used to ram the doors into the Capitol building. So that was interesting.
Breaking windows.
Yes. Let's see here. So at 1:27. So we only got about 15 minutes here between when they're heading towards the Capitol, and it's very quickly that they're starting to breach through perimeters here. So 1:27, official notification circulates encouraging officials to evacuate the Capitol building. 1:46, Rep. Somebody tweets that a pipe bomb has been reported at the Capitol building as people are trying to force their way into the building. Let's see here. 2:16, about an hour into this, protesters are seen entering the Capitol building, going upstairs to reach the two chambers. They reach the outside of the Senate chamber. So about an hour between heading to the Capitol building and getting inside the Capitol building. So this was happening rather quickly. 2:21. So more people are attempting to break down doors to get inside the building through other entrances. Let's see here. 2:23. Senate abruptly interrupts its session and goes into recess as protesters enter the Capitol building. Several minutes later, a warning to members of the House is heard on the live stream. Get down under the chairs if necessary. Be prepared and stay calm. Let's see here. 2:24. Following Pence's refusal to raise objections to the electoral vote count, Trump tweets that the vice president did not have the courage to do the right thing. So while Trump supporters are breaching the Capitol and suspending the vote, Trump is tweeting, "Well, I didn't like how the vote was going anyways." So
still not a call to violence.
Yeah. I mean, again, does it look good? No. But
is it true though?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's you can find some comedy in it, but yeah. And like I said, does it look good? No, it doesn't look good from our side. But if you're talking about if we do this, the left is they're gonna say that we're looking bad. They're gonna be upset at us. Well, again, there's no contrast. Just your existence is the Fourth Reich to the left. So there's not. If you want to, from an internal perspective, we can have our own conversation about whether or not this looks good. And I don't think that there's anyone that's saying that this looks good. Now, there's certain people trying to justify it, or, as we're saying, understand it, or, as I was just very honest a little while ago, certain aspects of it that I like, but that's not a principled position. That's a visceral human reaction that I had. But
if someone's going to condemn it and say how terrible this is on the left, then you have to also say how terrible those other riots that they've been supporting were too, before I could take them seriously.
Yeah. Let's see here. So then you've got 2:28. Protesters clash with the police inside the Capitol building. 2:30. Protesters start pouring into the middle of the Capitol building. Let's see here. CBRN escape hoods. Okay, so yeah, you know what? You want to read that part, Derek? I think you probably actually know what these mean, right?
Okay.
CBRN, is that a term you're familiar with? That was the
CBRN,
tear gas stuff that they had.
CBRN. So it stands for chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear and their escape hoods.
Wait,
so
those
they're
are just
basically
like plastic bags they put on their head. That can survive a nuke? That's awesome.
no. So when a nuke goes off, if you survive the actual explosion, there's a lot of radioactive particles that are shot into the air that go far further than the explosion, way further. And those little specks of dust, those being on your skin, will cause radiological damage to you because they're irradiating everything they touch and are around. So a lot of the CBRN equipment is to keep that dust off of your skin and create a layer.
Yeah, and then there's something called fuel fleas, and they are little groupings of several hundred atoms or more, so about a dust-sized particle of what's left over after a either parts of the nuke don't actually like fuse properly, or there's just it's a dirty bomb or something like that. You'll get these what are called fuel fleas, and there's little particles, and because they're still radioactive and they're so small, when they emit a radiation particle, they're small enough that it actually grab a lot of inertia and they'll jump really far. And so you can actually breathe those in because they're jumping all over the place. That's why they call them fleas. But if you breathe one in or eat one, it's not a lot of radioactive material, but it's enough to kill you. Even just several hundred atoms of radioactive material are enough to KO you. So that's another reason why you've got those gas masks on over your face to protect it out of your mouth. So that happened at 2:37 as they put on these hoods. They were given out to politicians and journalists inside the Capitol building. Democrat representative for Connecticut Jim Himes tweets, "Police have asked us to get gas masks out as there has been tear gas used in the rotunda." So a lot of people. So there was actually Kamala Harris specifically. I think it was yesterday or the day before. She gave a speech about how there's a big difference between what happened at the BLM riots and what happened at these riots. And as I agree. As you can see here, the pictures between them, yes, there was a lot of difference. But Kamala Harris, I don't think that she saw the same differences that Dyer's thinking of. So she was saying, among other things, that the police were willing to use tear gas against BLM, but not against the Trump supporters when you've got videos of tear gas in the rotunda and you've got Democrats tweeting out, well, we have to put on gas masks because they put tear gas in the rotunda. So I don't have a lot of experience breathing in tear gas. I'm sure Dyer does, though. But I do. Rotunda, that's just called Wednesdays. But the rotunda I've been in it. I'm sure enough of you have been in the rotunda. I mean, going to DC seems like thankfully a pretty simple pastime for Americans. Most people make the pilgrimage at least once. But I've been to DC several times, been to the rotunda a few. It's a grand area, but I wouldn't call it that big. And I would say that you get one or two canisters of tear gas in there. That's gonna be a pretty thick fog in there. So other people who've got more experience than me in tear gas have said typically you'll deploy it outside. That's the preferred method because it can disperse. When you deploy it inside and it has nowhere to go, it tends to build up. It tends to displace oxygen, and it also, some of you more libertarian folks out there will know, is very flammable in a confined environment. And the used to be a preferred method for the FBI to get rid of people that they weren't happy with by tear gassing their buildings, and then oops, it caught on fire and everybody died. That happened like 30 times during the 70s and 80s. Waco was one of those times. So the idea that they were willing to put tear gas in a confined area in the Capitol building, that's a pretty big move, a pretty bold move. That not what they did to BLM, where it was out in the open air and you had places to go. You know
what? The BLM Antifa riots actually resulted in some places banning the use of tear gas.
So they were the point of tear gas is to get you to move, right? So yes. When you do that outside, well, you've got the whole outside to run to. When you do that inside, you don't got anywhere to go. You're just there.
Except for out, I guess.
Well, yeah, but you got the rotunda. I think that there's only two routes in and out of that, two main routes. And you get down those hallways. I mean, you get you get 1,000 people, even 100 people in the Capitol building. I mean, you get those hallways blocked up pretty quickly. You're not getting out of there. You got to stampede at that point. So this is not going very well. Now, there was an interesting video where there was a plan by the police. There was a lot of people in the rotunda. There was a plan by the police to close the doors at both sides and then do a mass arrest of everybody that was in there. And then the Trump supporters realized what was going on, and they pushed at the door before the Capitol Police were able to get it latched, and they unarrested themselves. They de-arrested
Which we've been
themselves.
told is a good thing.
Yeah.
'Cause, think about it this way. If we go by the standards set by the Democrats in the last 6 months, then it was moral and justified because of perceived injustices for there to be a violent riot, and that what causes violence actually is the police responding to violence. We've learned that. So really, they shouldn't have had the federal police do anything.
Yeah.
If we go by their standard.
Those are really like weak windows on the Capitol building. I would have thought that those would be like more bulletproof. Yeah, or like
You'd think so.
blast proof. Like even just blast proof, I would have thought. I mean, like you don't even need to get into the Capitol building. You just go. Well, I don't think it's wise for me to describe what you could do, but those windows not being blast proof, I think you guys can probably guess what the problem with that being is. But I digress. Yeah. Okay, so let's see here. 2:39 more protesters are trying to enter the building through windows on the ground floor, which we just saw some videos of. Individuals breaking windows, reportedly booed and decried by other protesters. So so there's some videos of one woman trying to stop the flood by putting her hands up and saying, no, this is what Antifa does, and trying to get people to stop. And again, that's where you get this idea on the left is they're trying to pretend that like the right is a monolith, because the left is a monolith. It really is, for all the reasons I've already described. I'm not going to go back through all of them. But that is their experience with politics. Is they're a monolith, and so they look at us and they're either being ignorant or they just don't understand that like different people do different things. That the right isn't a monolith. So I think that if you had 100 random Republicans throughout the country or 100 random conservatives, I bet you most of them would do what that woman did if given the opportunity and say, hey, no, don't do that. And then you get, a couple of yahoos go through and break those windows. Again, you could probably maybe 100 people that were actually breaking stuff down, and then you've got the rest of the people just following them in. That's, so you do have people out there saying, don't do it. So why, when I'm condemning, when I'm the left and the right are asking me to condemn this, am I like condemning her too? Like what am I condemning? There's no movement here that I'm attached to that I feel like I've got any responsibility towards. There's
also the number of people that went into the Capitol building are a fraction of the people who went to the rally for Trump. Just want to bring that up. It is not representative of the group. However, when Antifa comes out to protest, they're all going in the same uniform, using the same tactics for the same purpose. They are all part of the riot.
So BXBZA8 on YouTube, which hopefully I didn't say like some kind of bad code word. I don't know. He says all those who stormed in must have realized that they were being multi-recorded. So that was one of the observations by I want to say it was either Elijah Schaefer. I think it was Elijah Schaefer. That it might have also been Andy No, but I think it was Elijah Schaefer. Noted that everybody that was doing that on Wednesday, they were all doing that without the bail funds, without a lawyers guild ready and standing by, without a friendly city politicians, friendly state politicians, or friendly national politicians. They were doing that completely on their own with no support whatsoever and no expectation of a safety net on the other side. When Antifa goes out and does that stuff, they get bussed in. They've got organized lunches for them. They have everything's being paid for by laundered Soros
They're
money.
often paid themselves to be there.
Yes. There's people who do that professionally. You've got on the other side of it, after the event is over, there is lawyers guilds. There's the ACLU. You've got Kamala Harris raising money for you so that you can get bailed out. Once you are bailed out, you've got the Lawyers Guild to protect you. And then just from public sentiment, you've got every Fortune 500 company and every mainstream media outlet running interference for you, talking about what a hero you were for burning down that guy's bar. On the right, they went in there. They're just jumping off the cliff, no parachute, no bungee cord, just taking the plunge.
Yep.
All right.
They often actually have jobs.
Yes. All right. So 2:30. Okay. So 2:44. Doors to the House chamber are barricaded from the inside. There are reports of shots fired. Nancy Pelosi's office is broken into, which those initial reports of shots fired, I believe a lot of those were attributed to flashbangs. Now, there was one shot fired, which I'm sure we will get into at some point here. But a lot of those initial shots fired reports were actually misidentified flashbangs. I would imagine that a flashbang in a enclosed marble environment would be very loud.
The flashbang's purpose is to be loud and bright and disorienting, and to disorient someone long enough for you to shoot them, and to confuse them so you can arrest them easily.
And
that
works
works
again, outdoors. This is after they've filled the building with tear gas, and tear gas is flammable, and back to the FBI's preferred method of extermination. A lot of those were believed to be again tear gas fueled, but ignited by flashbangs. So, I guess I don't know what the Capitol Police were planning there, but it seems like we've seen the result of tear gas in an enclosed space with flashbangs. We know how that ends usually, so I suppose we're all lucky that didn't happen.
So I imagine that there are some police departments out there where the police don't use tear gas enough to maybe really be thinking about that. But the DC police have had to use tear gas a lot, and I think if they're like the military as far as safety training is, they probably have been briefed a lot on the safe way to use those munitions. I kind of doubt they didn't know what the risk of what they were doing there.
Yeah, I know flashbangs are always loud, Catman. Thank you. I'm talking about when it's bouncing off of marble and reverberating.
It is louder inside of an enclosed space, just like firing a gun inside a closed space is louder.
It's gonna be like.
But yes, a flashbang is loud because that's what flashbangs do.
Derp. Okay, so Nancy's office was broken into, showing still open emails left in place quickly amid their evacuation. Later, more people take pictures in the office. There's a guy who's sitting in her chair. It's also been reported since then that they had hard drives and laptops stolen out of Nancy and other people's offices. There is also, I don't think it's in Sargon's timeline here, but there was also reports that at one point, a group of the protesters that had infiltrated the Capitol asked one of the Capitol Police where Chuck Schumer's office was, and reportedly the Capitol Police officer gave them directions. So it's kind of like they were on a tour. It's like, hey, because I've done that once. I went to the Capitol building. I wanted to go talk to my congressman, though that was when the Republicans were not in power. So the little known side bit of trivia: when you are not in power, when you are the party in power, you get to have your offices in the Capitol building. When you're not in power, there's a building 2 blocks down that the out of power party has their offices in. But yeah, you just go. Most days. Probably not anymore, but you can go to the Capitol building on during normal times and go say, I'm looking for my congressman's office. Where's it at? And the Capitol Police will direct you. So it's just kind of funny. Just the idea that in the middle of a quote unquote siege, there's just hey, I want a tour. Can you direct me towards Chuck Schumer's office for no particular reason? Oh yeah, of course, it's over there. It's just kind of funny to imagine that. I probably imagine at least some of the Capitol Police probably like, yes, please go. I will escort you there. You also have to remember too, the response from the left after this, directly from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, was that if this had been BLM breaching the chamber, the police would have executed them. They would have opened fire immediately, and it was because it was a bunch of white conservatives that the police didn't open fire. And so, in the middle of all of this, you have Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
The police just start shooting people.
Yes. We'll get, yeah. Let me finish. But yeah, we'll get to that. But you basically have Kamala Harris and Joe Biden directly accusing the Capitol Police at large that they are racist. That if they saw a black person, they would open fire immediately, and only because they are white that the Trump supporters were not executed during their infiltration. Dyer, is it true that the police response to BLM has been much more stern than what it was during the quote unquote Trump riot? Is that true?
Actually, they don't. I believe, counter to popular belief, when Antifa and BLM came out, which involved a lot of black people, but also a lot of privileged white kids, the police didn't just start shooting people at random. That didn't happen once. In fact, they often would stand down and take a knee and show support for the BLM and Antifa rioters to try to reduce the tensions by kneeling to the violent rioters, even painting their slogans on the ground in their city, on the road in their cities.
All right, so we got 2:47, which is, how long is that after the evacuation? Probably about 20 minutes after they've recessed and evacuated. Protesters reach the House chamber, and they take pictures in the chair up at the front of the Senate chamber. There's an iconic photo of a Viking inside the Capitol is taken. Let's see here. Yes. So this guy's apparently been arrested. This guy is also Antifa. So he's been at Antifa. Well, I don't know if he's like specifically Antifa. He's not 100% Antifa like the guy that executed a Trump supporter was. But this guy has been at many Antifa riots throughout the summer. So he's a known figure
in support of them.
Yeah. So he's a known figure for the people that are reporting on the riots all summer. So I don't recognize him, but that's what we're being told. So the most iconic Trump supporting insurgent is actually Antifa. Very funny. It seems about right. Let's see here. So 2:50, law enforcement confirms that a shot was fired inside the building. Alicia Babbitt, a 35-year-old Air Force veteran, was shot in the neck, sustaining grave injuries. She later dies of her wounds. Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser issues a curfew beginning at 6 p.m. and ending at 6 a.m. the following day. So this Air Force veteran, Alicia Babbitt, she was shot in the neck by a Capitol Police officer who, giving him the benefit of the doubt and not just that he fired randomly into a crowd that was mostly a crowd of other Capitol Police officers. We believe it was probably a negligent discharge, but that's actually just a guess. They don't have any evidence that it was negligent discharge. He could have actually just shot at a group. But what is interesting is that when Alicia Babbitt was shot, she was surrounded by 3 or 4 other Capitol Police that were trying to figure out they were kind of at a junction in the hallway that was leading to the stairs, and the Capitol Police were trying to figure out what to do with them. And this other officer that shot was very far down the hall and through a set of closed doors with some of the glass smashed out, shot at 4 of his comrades, and then happened to strike this Air Force veteran in the neck. So either that was an accident, which, to have a negligent discharge in the Capitol building as a Capitol Police officer, trigger discipline is important, guys. It's very, very important to have good trigger discipline, and don't point at anything that you don't intend to destroy. So I don't know. That's what do you think on that one, Dyer? I know you've got some thoughts on this.
My thoughts was that it was a negligent discharge because it didn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense for him to be firing or pointing his gun in that maybe that doesn't make sense to point his gun in that direction, but other officers were. But it makes sense to pull his trigger because she was not someone who was actively at that moment taking any aggressive action against anyone. There was other people around her who were more were doing more things to like push against doors and to try to get into the building. She was just kind of just standing there. It wouldn't make sense. It only would make sense that they were not trying to shoot her and it was a negligent discharge. That's just my guess with my reasoning. What bothers me is that this person has devoted a large portion of their life, sacrificed a large portion of their life to this country, and simply is at this rally because she wants to have her voice heard, and she gets killed for it. I think this officer needs to have charges brought up against him for, if for nothing else. I mean, yeah, it's murder, but he also, if you give him the benefit of the doubt and say this was a complete accident, he put everyone else's life at risk too. I mean, there's no excuse for this. There was no reason for her to suspect that she was a risk to anyone at the time when the gun was drawn or fired. You only put a gun at someone that you plan to kill. That she was not presenting a risk to anyone. It is disappointing.
Well, so I will,
at the very least.
To push back on that a little bit, so I think that there should be an expectation that if you're part of a group breaching the Capitol building of any country, but especially the
standard with the other groups was that this is okay, right?
Oh, I understand what the standard is. I don't disagree with what the standard is, but I think that maybe that's been that lulled people into a false sense of security. But I think that there should be a sense that you're taking your life into your own hands when you do something like this. Now, that is counter to what actually happened, and that she wasn't shot because she was quote unquote breaching something. Again, like we said, we're pretty sure it was either negligent discharge or a really, really bad almost friendly fire shot. So it wasn't that she was shot and killed because of that's the standard operating procedure to shoot and kill anybody that was breaching the building. She was just shot and killed because the Capitol Police weren't paying attention.
So breaking into a building isn't reason enough for a police officer to shoot someone. And there has to be. They are proposing a risk that would warrant deadly force. In this case, in this riot, her standing there in the building, even if you go with the least charitable and say she broke in and the law she broke was that she was in there by breaking in, that doesn't warrant deadly force.
I've been saying for years that government is the left's religion. Also, we spend almost $1 trillion a year on defense, and the Capitol gets conquered by the Duck Dynasty boys. And a guy in Wookiee underwear? Cops were told to tolerate riots in 2020.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think it's been commented on a lot that it was very surprising to everybody how easy it is to breach the Capitol building while there's Congress inside of it. I guess it's pretty simple. I think it would have been very easy that day for now. I don't think even our adversaries thought that was going to be a successful venture. I don't think any of our adversaries thought that the mob was going to be successful in breaching the Capitol. No one did. But had they known that it was and been prepared for it, it would have been very easy for one of our adversaries to blend into the crowd and plant something that would have caused a mass casualty event. It's the hard drives and laptops that were stolen from Nancy and other offices. That's probably problematic. Those could end up in the wrong hands. They could. God forbid one of Nancy's laptops ends up in the hands of somebody that's fucking a Chinese spy. That would be bad if national security secrets were in the hands of somebody fucking a Chinese spy. That'd be really bad. So
that would never happen, though.
Yeah. So that's this is very problematic, no doubt. But I just don't know. I mean, so I wonder, that's gonna be an interesting question. Is this going to prompt a change in how the capital is secured? Obviously, it's not very secured at all. So I wonder if the next time this is tried, if there'll be more of a lethal response right away, or if they'll have a better way of doing it.
Or having more officers to actually secure the facility better.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Let's see here. The Infidel said that there's a video of the shooting officer taking deliberate aim. I haven't seen that. I did see a frame of him from a long way down the hall, and it really reminded me of the Zapruder tapes, where you've got this guy really far away with his arm extended, and that's kind of the same shot that we saw in this situation, where, you know, in the seconds after Babbitt was shot, you see down this long hallway there's an officer with his arm extended. So I guess if you got that and you want to link that somewhere for me, Infidel, I'd be curious to see that. I had something else I wanted to say, but I'm sure I'll bring it back up later. I think it was it was on Triumvirate, which, thank you for the $10, Triumvirate. Let's talk about the left's religion, which I got a piece on that, which we'll probably get into a little bit. So Sargon did a nice breakdown minute by minute all the way through 11 p.m., which we're not going to go through all of that, but we're still kind of in the meat of it here. So we'll read through a little bit more of this timeline, then we'll switch over to the discussion of religious iconography in the left, and why was this 9/11? Well, it was 9/11 because you didn't just have a regular riot, you attacked the temple, and yes, they actually called it the temple. So we'll get into that in a second, though. Do you have anything else you want to say before we move on to reading more of the timeline? Okay, so let's hear it. Nancy asks for the National Guard to clear and secure the Capitol. Minutes later, the Pentagon denies the request to deploy the National Guard. Well, that's interesting. See here, 2:57. Several protesters are using scaffolding outside of the Senate to reach the second floor, where Mitch McConnell's office is located. 2:59. Rep. David Trone tweets out that Congress people have been evacuated and are safe. If only these small business owners all across America this year had that same opportunity.
The ability to feel safe.
Yes, and evacuated before they were burned alive inside their small business. 3:07, the Senate chamber is reported to have been entered through the roof. Really? Protesters roaming around the room. 3:12, more offices are broken into. The Viking conquers the House chamber. Let's see here. 3:13, protesters entering various offices inside the Capitol building. Trump tweets, quote, "I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you." Yeah, that wasn't really that was kind of a milquetoast response there. Let's see here. So, this is one of those situations where that probably would have been a better time for Trump to not tweet, or to have tweeted, "You need to leave the Capitol." I don't think that we've I think it's rather consistent, Dyer, for us to say that in this moment Trump probably could have made better decisions, and that he's not perfect. I think that is probably pretty consistent with how we've talked about Trump in the past, to say that again today, right?
Yeah, I could say that his statement isn't ideal, but I also don't think that what
9/11?
He did amounts to what they are accusing him of. They are saying that his statements were incitement to violence, and that the actions of these individuals are his fault. His imperfect response does not equate to that. Not one bit.
Yeah, so hold on. I'm watching this video on the side here for what Infidel sent me. I don't want to play it on stream until I can see what's actually going on. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, geez. Yeah, we can't play that on YouTube.
What is it?
It's the video of the shooting. It's a much more, I don't want to say better, because it's not better, but it's a very clear view of what happened. The Infidel's right. That wasn't a negligent discharge. Well, maybe when we get off of YouTube, I'll show you, Dyer. That's okay. That wasn't a negligent discharge. That was stance, aim, sight, trigger. That was
Then that's murder, and he needs to go to jail.
Yeah.
She was doing nothing.
That was Okay, so let's see here. So the Senate chamber is recaptured. So 3:20, the Senate chamber is recaptured by law enforcement. So they were in there for maybe about 20 minutes of, they've conquered the seat of power. So one of the things that I think is interesting is that in the modern day, you can't conquer a country by conquering the capital. Like the buildings are important and they're convenient, but the buildings are, especially in a modern context, the buildings are not the country. It used to be before the technology era, the information era, maybe even back as far as the 1900s, you could conquer a capital of something and take over the building, and then that's it. You're the king now. You still see that in a lot of underdeveloped countries around the world today in modern time, where you really just need to capture the capital, and you've got the reins of power. In America and in modern Western countries, it's just not really how it works anymore. Everything's too digital. It's again, the capital is a convenient place to convene, but we can certainly conduct a lot of government business without being at a physical location. I mean, just do it over the internet or do a phone call. There's a lot of other ways to do that. So the idea that capturing the capital in a physical manner, that meant anything, was
a lot of lawmakers actually been casting votes over the internet.
Yeah. So it's a little silly for America to do a riot protest like this. And again, that goes into a little bit of the reason as to why we've said, again, been very consistent, that we don't think that in the modern context, we don't think that protests are very useful, especially on the right, because they're always viewed negatively by the media. But the idea that, like, well, if you don't go to a protest, then the congressmen don't know that you want that, I think that's a little silly.
That's not true.
Yeah.
I think it's actually more effective for Trump supporters to have online forums where they get to speak to each other and let each other know that they're people of other like minds, and then that gets the part of what a protest does or a rally does, of allowing people to know that there's more support. Right? You can do that online, as well as for the pressuring of politicians. Just calling their office and sending them emails also does the same effect.
Yeah. So we had, for 20 minutes, we had a unelected mob of people had captured the Senate chambers. Like, that's, in any other country, that's kind of the end of your Senate chamber there. That's kind of okay. Well, it's occupied now, and we now have a new government. In America, it's just, okay, well, we're going to clear you out. Like, glad you guys had fun. We're going to arrest you now and clear you out, and hope you enjoyed the selfies. So this was a very silly thing to do in that context, which is another reason why don't support it. Again, visceral. All of my enjoyment of this, as I've explained, is visceral human reaction. I'm not going to defend it as a principled position because it's not. And then, just from a logical perspective, this was a very silly thing to do. There was nothing that was going to be accomplished at the end of this. I would say that what happened from the perspective of the right, what happened was the best possible thing that could have happened. All of the other possible ways that this could have played out would have been much more people died. That was the only other option. So what did happen was possibly the best possible outcome. And the best possible outcome didn't do anything. It had
nothing
no effect.
Positive, at least.
Yes. So it's a very, very silly idea, and I don't recommend that it happen again. I know that there's on the 20th for Inauguration Day, there is another planned DC event called the Million Militia March that is trying to be organized. And I don't presume to know what's going to happen there. But if for whatever reason they attempt any kind of physical occupation of a building, that'll also be equally silly.
If let's say you do that, you have this big Million Militia March, and you take control of some buildings, and you hold your protest, what will be achieved? Best case scenario, what will be achieved? You're not going to sway any politician's opinion because of that. But what's the worst case scenario? You might be part of a conflict that can get very bloody. So it's not. It doesn't benefit you to do it.
So, I think we'll probably be done with going through the rest of the day here. Obviously, as the Capitol starts getting cleared out, you've got for the next half hour to an hour, you still have activity in the Capitol building. They start getting cleared out, pushed back out into the streets. The protest was declared, or the curfew was declared for 6 p.m. And surprisingly, at around 6 p.m., the streets had largely cleared out. That was actually pretty surprising. And then throughout the rest of the night, the Congress came back into session. They would later in the early morning of the next day, they would have completed their count of the electoral votes. And Joe Biden is now officially the president-elect. So, and then you just had throughout the rest of that night, and the day's since is just a lot of admonishment and finger waving from the left. They are going to be putting in articles of impeachment on Monday for Trump. There is calls for expelling all of the Republican congressmen from the Senate and the House. There's a lot of other stuff the left wants to. They've like I said, they put in bills that they want to to basically make banking allow banks to very easily debank conservatives. They wanted to create a classification that everyone that was there was a terrorist, and they wanted to make sure that they couldn't be on. They wouldn't be able to fly home. Put them on the no-fly list. So the left is all that they did their typical response. That's kind of expected. Just kind of the general craziness. I do want to point out that it's interesting that we saw this at another MAGA march in Denver over the summer, where another veteran was executed by 9 News. It's interesting that at a Antifa riot, you shoot 3 people, and one of them's a pedophile, one of them's a wife beater, and another one's also kind of a wife beater.
There's just call statistics, man.
Yeah, you shoot 2 people at a Trump rally, and they're both veterans. So, yeah, the you would think that it's kind of random who happened to get shot, and the probability that you shot the only 3 pedos at the Antifa rally, it doesn't seem likely. It seems probably that's representative of the crowd. I know 3 is not a large sample size, but it is interesting statistics. And 2 is also not a large sample size, but again, you shoot a couple random people at a Trump rally. Turns out they're all veterans, and I would say that probably, at least the mentality of that is probably representative of the crowd, similar to how wife beating and raping 5-year-olds is probably indicative of how Antifa, that it's representative of their crowd.
Yeah, there's just, if you throw a bullet into a crowd of Antifa, most likely you're going to hit a pedo.
Yes. Let's see here. So we were talking about the religiosity of what was going on. I'll do my part real quick here, and I'll let you do. You've got some slides here that you wanted to go through, Dyer. I'll let you go through those. And then maybe we'll see if we want to end the show at some point. Yeah. All right, so we got some quotes here, and there's a lot of other sentiment from the left the last couple of days, and generally the last few years. But the last 2 days, you had Chuck Schumer said, "This temple to democracy was desecrated. Its windows smashed. Our offices vandalized." You had Joe Biden. The certification of the electoral college vote is supposed to be a sacred ritual. You had Nancy referring to the Capitol building as a temple. You had other Democrats referring to elected officials as sacred office holders. So, as Trevor pointed out, and as we had planned on going through, there's the reason why the event on Wednesday was, quote unquote, far worse, a 9/11 as compared to all of the other burning and destruction that we saw this summer, is because they attacked a religious icon. It's not just that we have a civilian government of elected citizens that are just happen to be representing us for a few years. No. These are a priestly caste. They are occupying the people's house. They are in a religious temple, holy ground, be it. That they're and because they are in a holy ground, a holy place, a holy temple, and that what they're doing are sacred rituals, and they themselves are sacred office holders. How could you possibly question their edicts? It's ordained by God himself. It is spiritual, it is moral, it is good, it is just that they be in charge of everything. And to question that is to really question God. You don't want to be the one questioning God.
All right,
do
Fox. Okay, Fox. You'll notice a very big difference between how the elitist people on the Democrat side, who believe that they are the priests and priestesses who dictate to us how we are to live our lives, and that they are above us. They make those COVID restriction laws, but they don't have to follow themselves. That's for the little people to do. There's a difference between the words they use. And the words do have a lot of meaning and telling about how you view something. There's a big difference between how these Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, are describing their station in life and what their job is compared to what the framers described the same thing. They used to describe working as a representative of a state as being you are a servant to the people. You are representing them. You are working for them. You are not above them. And what used to be sacred was not the position, was not the job. What used to be sacred was the God-given rights that they believed we had just from being born into this world. Those were sacred rights. It was not the job that was sacred. It was those rights, those sacred rights that their job was meant to protect. They were not sacred. The job was not sacred. It was those rights and those principles that were sacred.
And so now you've got where the Democrats have self-styled themselves as spiritual leaders in a sacred location. And so any attack or even just mere disagreement is not just a conversation to be had or a debate to be had. You're disagreeing with your spiritual leaders, man. That's ordained by God. The only reason why you would disagree with a spiritual leader that was ordained by God is if you're evil. So by self-styling themselves as spiritual leaders, as sacred office holders doing sacred rituals in a temple, you're now evil for going against that. You are the devil incarnate going against the sacred temple rituals. It's just absolutely incredible, this kind of language coming from the left, that I thought that we had a secular republic. I didn't realize that we were living under a theocracy where passing bills is sacred rituals to God. Jesus Christ. This is it's interesting that I'm seeing this kind of language. I was surprised when I heard it the first few times, but then I see it. It's just pervasive where they're all using the same language, and start listening to them. I'm sure you guys have noticed it before, but I noticed it a lot the last 2 days, where there's this very unified message between all of the leaders of the Democrat Party, all using this religious terminology, calling it a temple and calling what they do sacred and calling themselves sacred. It's very, very disconcerting.
And it's not just those. The meaning of those words backs up their actions, how they've been acting, is that they are set apart. They are different from us. They are above us. Yes. You'll notice a big difference between the way a lot of the Republicans and Democrats have reacted to the COVID restrictions. Is the Republicans often would take great effort to follow the restrictions that they are putting on their people in their state. So you have like Ted Cruz, who was not cutting his hair, not going to the barber. He was not he was not eating out. He was doing not Skype, but calling in to Congress. And he was following the restrictions to the T, whereas we have Nancy Pelosi making it so she can get a haircut in a salon, while that same salon has to be closed to all other people. You have Gavin Newsom of California going into restaurants that the other people are not allowed to go to. They see that those rules not applying to them. There was a very snarky response from the governor of Wisconsin, was it? Anyways, I forget. It was Democrat state though. Who were like, "Oh no, that doesn't apply to me."
Well, you saw that with Michigan too.
Michigan side.
Yeah, as her husband, Whitmer's husband, went out and did stuff, and she didn't think that it should apply to him because he wanted to go fishing. No, so you've got this.
It was Michigan, sorry.
Priestly class that is, well, they're closer to God, therefore they should have special privileges because they're closer to God. As you were talking about with COVID, is every time a conservative gets COVID, it's like, well, they got it because they're immoral. And every time a Democrat gets COVID, it's like, well, it's because they were fraternizing with unclean Republicans. So you're starting to see this. It's very similar to the way the monarchy works in the UK, right? Or how it worked historically. I know that they've secularized quite a bit, but the rulers in the kingship were by religious right. It was, well, they were chosen by God to be in those positions, and then there's the people that surrounded with them, the dukes that controlled the regions. Well, they were selected by the royal family, who was ordained by God to select the next cast of people that were well, you weren't necessarily selected by God, but you were selected by somebody who was selected by God, so that's pretty good. But you got the same kind of mentality coming along with the left, where they're trying to stylize the government now as this kind of religious authority, as again, sacred rituals.
Yeah. So, by the way, Gavin Newsom, after he's on his sixth recall attempt. The people of California have tried recalling him 5 times already. This is the 6th time, and they've got 1 million out of the 1.5 million votes, or not votes, signatures required from the citizens to put it to a vote to have him recalled. Which, by the way, I have no faith the Californian people are willing to actually recall him, because they keep re-electing him, and 1.5 million, even if they get that, is a fraction of the people who actually voted for him. So I think this is going to just be a waste of time and money, because Californians aren't willing to actually remove a governor who has destroyed their lives and not followed the same rules that he has made them follow.
Alrighty, so you got your slides that you wanted to go through. What'd you have on that? You can have the rest of the show. That's all I got in the map.
Okay, we just got the
tweet.
Oh yeah, so AOC. On the note of civility, we kind of passed by this general topic without covering this, but I did mention that Senator Cruz was calling for unity, and then AOC's response to that call for unity was to say that he should be removed. He should resign. Now, there actually was not just AOC saying this, that they wanted to have members of Congress who had supported Trump removed from Congress. And to think about this is kind of these kinds of actions, these kinds of words don't reflect a group that wants unity, but they definitely do push people towards revolution. By silencing people, by making people feel unsafe and persecuted, and also taking away their livelihoods, this leads people to do desperate actions. And then the most egregious of this would be if you were to take a state's representatives out of Congress, out of the conversation, and out of the process for passing laws. How do you think a state would respond to having their representatives kicked out and that them being excluded from law passing? How do you think that the state would respond to it? That is a insane thing that she's suggesting. So,
yeah,
there's one other thing I want to respond to. There was a conversation I had with someone recently where they said that the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans, that the far left is what the Republicans are, like that they precede the Republicans. So the Democrats from far left Democrats, the progressives from 30 years ago, are what the Republicans are like now. And this graph, if you could pull that up real quick. I don't think that reflects it. The Democrats actually have moved away from the center, where the Republicans have only moved a little bit. The Democrats have moved a lot more. So the example they used was, Republicans are now okay with gay marriage. Okay. That doesn't mean that everything the Democrats far left 30 years ago are now what Republicans are for. Opinions on different issues have changed, yeah, but the Republicans are not for communism. They're not, trying to, dismantle our governmental system, and they're not for UBI. Another example, they said, the Republicans right now are trying to pass a stimulus for COVID. That's just like UBI. No, there's a massive moral difference. Even though I know we have some conservatives in Congress who are mad about the stimulus. The stimulus is not a UBI. It's not based on the pretense that everyone should get a basic income every month, whether or not they have a job, whether or not they are contributing to society. It is based off the fact that the government has caused harm through its policies. They have caused damages on people, and they're trying to lessen those damages by giving a stimulus for that purpose. There's a massive difference, and that is not a sign that the Democrats of 30 years ago are what the Republicans are today. I think it's an absurd statement I just want to respond to.
I agree.
Okay. That's all I have for notes, though.
Okay. So I think that about covers it.
Let's release this chest real quick so people can get the rewards.
So I see a good viewing on YouTube tonight. You guys need to... I put a link in chat. I think there's one in the description. For DLive, YouTube, one of the things we didn't talk about is all the social media censorship that is rolling down the pike. If you're not following us on DLive, you're going to run into problems. I am on Parler under Fox Trevize.
I'm also on Parler.
Dyer's on Parler now. So we will... probably next week we'll run through a social media recap, and then we'll let you guys know of all the places that you can follow us. We're working on trying to figure out the best ways to get onto some of the other platforms. Unfortunately, options for streaming are very limited. There's a lot of options for storage, and I know that places like BitChute are working on streaming solutions within the year. So I guess try and follow us as many places as possible. Twitch should be one, as another one. We will do what we can. Voracious Blackson sent us an ice cream. Thank you. And
thank you very much.
Sent us a lemon. Thank you. And then Bear America just followed us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bear America.
And then let's see here. Infidel gave us 2 lemons, actually.
How dare you short him on his thank you?
Well, I just said it. All right, so
you made him wait for it, though.
I know.
Bastard.
Okay, so good luck, you guys. Hang in there. Don't do some. Hopefully, what we talked about tonight lets you do a little bit of soul searching on what happened on Wednesday. Like I said, I think I made pretty clear the distinction between the principled positions, the efficiency of not falling into the trap of defending everything to the left when you didn't personally do it. Now, if you were personally there, maybe the discussion is a little bit different for you. But if you weren't personally there, it's don't fall into the trap of having to defend things that you didn't do. That's not what we're individualists. Yeah. It's not worth it.
That's rule number 1.
And then I think I made a distinction that will hopefully put into context for a lot of you, because I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way I did, where you know it doesn't align with your principles. You know it's maybe not a moral position, but you know deep down in your heart, like, damn, that felt good to see that. That felt really good to see that. So hopefully I put that into some context so that you guys can kind of self-evaluate with that as well. So
yeah, you can say this is not principled. This is not correct because it doesn't follow your principles. You also can say at the same time, I don't feel bad for someone who lights their house on fire and then complains about it burning.
Yep.
Like, that's your fault. All right. Hey, we'll see you guys on the next show, which are we doing a Wednesday show?
Sure.
All right. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Direwolf out.
All right. Trevize signing off. See you guys.
See you.